I'm Ned. I'm the co-founder of Aaru. We simulate human behavior using multi-agent systems and simulate populations to predict the world's events. So we do everything from politics to private sector to defense work. It's pretty fun stuff.
I am Assad. Pleasure to be here again. Thanks for having us. I am the CEO and founder of Clerkie. Like you mentioned before, we pretty much automate the full debt lifecycle. And so that means for making it very easy for everyday families to pay off their debt and understand their finances, all the way to making it easy for financial institutions to originate the debt, service the debt, and collect the debt. And we use AI to do so.
Thanks. Samir, co-founder, CEO of Farsight AI. Great to be here. We basically leverage proprietary AI agents to automate the most complex and nuanced tasks throughout financial services. Main focus today is within investment banking and private equity. And basically our agents execute tasks in seconds that are like market updates, sims, pitch decks, which by human labor takes months. We do it in seconds at better quality than humans and drive real revenue for our customer base.
And we spend a lot of our time developing our own systems in-house at Vestigo to use alternative data to identify companies using a lot of the natural language techniques that are getting us also excited. And then the other half of our time is spent chasing the likes of these guys around the country, trying to get them to partner with us. So really nice to be here.
So I want to start with a question for Guy, since so when I was at MIT, I was the first guy on campus actually training neural nets, and I have a common bond with Guy over being early to market on this. So Guy was using AI dialogues, actually two-way chat dialogues, using technology, an NLP technology from Stanford before the LLM wave even started. Tell us how that all got started.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a breeze. To be honest with you, it feels like yesterday when we were starting on these models, and some of these models, as you know, weren't very efficient. They weren't very accurate. A lot of false precisions, a lot of early day hallucinations, as they call it now. But I think it's been very fulfilling to actually see everything come to fruition, because it really feels now that we are in the binary kind of Big Bang for at least large language models, because we were using LLP and we were doing a lot of language processing and so forth. And it's been nice to even see that wave of innovation actually transfer itself over to VLMs as well, because now you're starting to see visual models that are coming to the forefront. And so I think for us, it's been a very exciting journey. It's been a long plot journey. We do applaud the open AIs and the even Meta now. We've been very impressed with Llama and the open source models that are out there. And we do applaud them for actually making this a reality, because again, for a second there, it did seem that innovation is what's going to take hold, right? I remember the cycle where chatbots actually came to fruition, and there was a wave of investments that were actually done on chatbots, but very quickly you start seeing all these assistants go away and kind of die. But now it feels very real. It feels like there's a lot of adoption on the enterprise side, and that's something that's carrying itself.
Yeah, let's riff on that and talk about foundation technologies a little bit, because I know you started before the LLM wave with NLP technology out of Stanford, and then you started much more recently, during the middle of the latest foundation model wave. But what do you use for core technology, and how do you use it?
Yeah, we build our own proprietary models. It's been fascinating for us to see over the last, I guess since the big chat wave boom, that massive investment that goes to the foundational model companies, when I think everyone on this panel knows that the real profit is being made in application layer technologies. What we do is we build multi-agent systems. So essentially we're organizing thousands of these language models in parallel. We build our own models that are tuned for human behavior rather than just, knowledge recollection. The reality is when you're simulating a human decision, they don't always need to remember how many bullets were fired in the War of 1812. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And we're personally excited to see, such as lights of Link and other venture firms, some of the money transferring into application layer technologies rather than just sinking into never profit making foundational model firms. So yeah.
Very interesting. Samir, what about your core technology?
So at Farsight AI, we take more of an ensemble approach. So for each of these tasks or workflows that we execute, there are maybe 10 to 100 different subtasks. One of those subtasks could be describe what this company does for me, given web agents that we've had go out and find information. That task, ChatGPT is fine for. Even GPT-3 can do that pretty well. Then there are other tasks which are maybe more higher level thinking. which are come up with strategic rationales for why an acquisition might make sense, come up with ideas of different buyers that might be in market looking for this asset. And those are tasks where we use our own sort of fine-tuned models that leverage a lot of proprietary data that we've collected from customers and partners alike to basically come up with responses there that are better than not just GPT-4 or any foundation model out there, but better than human partners that are making multi-million-dollar bets and investments every year.
There's been sort of an odd parallel, I would say, in our own journey at Vestigo with the technology disruption we've seen in the last 3 years. I mean, when we got started using these kinds of systems to identify early stage companies, it was like, the out-of-the-box autoencoder from sklearn, and then XGBoost. And then, we were on top of the mountain the other day, and Pablo was saying how his mind kind of exploded when he first saw BERT. I had the same reaction myself. We got started with BERT. And then it wasn't long after that Mira started writing books with GPT-2, and that didn't quite work, but it was like just unbelievable. And then, of course, GPT-3 comes out, and now basically all the software that we built for the last 3 years, we basically just ripped and replaced with OpenAI and Anthropic. So I feel like I've kind of been living the journey of an early stage founder. Please forgive me. But just watching the tooling I built to do my job get replaced by OpenAI.
What did those? So let me ask you a question. Most of what's happening in AI is really started a couple years ago and it's going to go the next 3 years. And this is the window of opportunity that defines a lifetime. And I haven't seen this since the internet boom when I was, relatively young, first investing, first starting companies, 1994, 95, 96, 97. How you chose to use those exact years was life-changing. And if you sprinted full speed, you could change the next 30 years of your life. And if you missed the window because you're distracted, you're in grad school, whatever, you're out of the country, you missed it and it didn't come back again until today. You guys, what's interesting to me is that you're actually very different ages, but you've chosen to line up your entrepreneurial journey around the moment that the world dictates. And so, for Ned, it's like, I don't have time for college. AI is right now. For Key, it's like, I have time for college and grad school, but oh wait, now AI is happening. I need to do it. For Samir, it's like, I cannot wait to get out of undergrad. I need to get into this revolution. Well, y'all managed to line it up so that you're here right now at the same moment in time. But I want you to just riff for a second on the decision-making process. And then especially for you, Ned, there's got to be a lot of forces on you saying, yeah, go down the traditional path, go get get a bachelor's degree, then go get a PhD. But you ignored all that, right?
Yeah. So, as you know, I dropped out of Harvard after literally 2.5 weeks. I just went to hold my position. I think there's two types of people who take massive risk. People who have nothing to lose and people with a massive safety net. I certainly didn't have nothing to lose, and my version of giving myself a safety net was by going to Harvard for 2 weeks, holding my spot, and taking a definite leave of absence, which allows me to dedicate my life to building what we build. But absolutely to your point, over here on the promenade, you see every single big name company talking about how they're working with AI. Excuse my language here, but it's all BS, right? This is the prime time to be building partnerships with these large Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, and really kind of accelerate what they're actually trying to do and make use of the massive budgets that have been allocated in this space. Absolutely, the time is now. The technology to build what we build was really only possible in February, and our company was formed officially in March, right? It's an opportunity cost to not be working in AI, especially in the application layer at this time.
And so Samir, you graduated, did a little bit of time in the venture world, and then said, no, I gotta jump on this right now. But I also know you're one of your co-founders. You grabbed the minute he graduated, right?
So I can give a little context here. So yeah, I had the luxury of obviously doing the undergrad from MIT, learned a ton there, did a lot of work with AI at that time, taught the AI class in 2017 on campus, and then had the benefit of doing a few years on Wall Street. So investment banking, private equity, which is now the problem that we, solve. So I had sort of a front row seat to watching and tracking the AI progress and kind of looking at my desk job and saying, well, the way this is done is fundamentally going to change very, very quickly. So rounded up the sort of two smartest guys I knew from school, who also happened to be good friends. And one of them, Noah Farrow, had an offer at Amazon to go full time. And we kind of just convinced him of this massive opportunity, hundreds of billions of dollars that these financial services companies spend on employees. And now AI can do that same work better it's just a massive opportunity that I think, we hope it's Farsight, but even if it's not 3 or 4 years from now, there's going to be multiple $10 billion companies servicing this market.
And if you know, and did it all, did you tell us about the exact region figure out, sorry?
Yeah, it's a question. So looking back on it, I'll tell you the candid answer. I think he pretended to hesitate in order to negotiate. But I think it was a pretty obvious decision. And, I think anybody coming out of school at this point, especially if you have that pedigree, there is no reason not to. You're going to get funded. There's a lot of venture funding out there. So your risk is pretty low. And it's not like whatever you learn at a traditional route or a traditional job like a Meta is going to help you better execute on something that's totally new, right? So I think those two combined, it's pretty easy to zip. Yeah. Yeah, you learn old ways of thinking, yeah.
Yeah, so then, Guy, what's your founder story? Do you ever go back to Stanford and try and convince people to drop out before they're finished? Or is that out of bounds for you? Or what's your founder journey?
I think for us, maybe I take a slightly different approach. Like I very much appreciate and love school. I respect education. Like for me, also my context, to your point, risk saving, typically come from two sources. If you do have a massive safety net, that helps. If you're a risk taker by nature, that helps. I think for me, I was like more so on the former side. But with that being said, I also grew up in Hague. And so there wasn't like a massive Fresla that was necessarily waiting for us. And so I think that definitely shaped my view of things. I was also very fortunate. I know oftentimes I don't believe in luck per se. I do believe in the whole adage that luck is on preparation meets opportunity. But I do think in some cases there are things opportunities that I was given by attending Stanford by yes, I earned my way into Stanford. But that being said, there's also a lot of friends that started companies that I was able to invest in. That gave me some safety net and so forth. And the last piece I would also say is I've always been intentional about creating a company. And so for me, I don't really care about market timing. What I really care about is is there a true pain point that I'm solving? Is that pain point big enough to make us billions and to help us IPO? And once I did cover that pain point, I kind of latched onto it. Seb was probably more so kind of on your phases. I remember having to make the pitch with him, but Seb is very much a risk taker as well, and he very much jumped on the bandwagon and never looked back.
So, a question for you. First company I founded, DataSage, we grew really, really quickly in 98 and 99. And then we sold the company in January of 2000. And it was a stock for stock transaction. And we got liquid on April 4th of 2000. And the valuation was just around $1 billion on our liquidity day. And now I look back in hindsight, and if you look at the NASDAQ, it was the exact pixel of the highest day of the NASDAQ. It was actually one day off the absolute peak. And our primary competitor, a company called Personify, was also talking to that same acquirer. In fact, they were there first. And they said, no, we want a higher valuation than $1 billion. And they missed that window. And then the market came down and down and down. I don't think there was an up day for about 3 years. And so they ended up selling for $50 million, years later. And I look back and say, I had no idea that this was going to be the peak of the NASDAQ. You just don't know what's coming. But I do know that the AI window is very fertile, and it's going up into the right for at least the short-term foreseeable future. But what do you guys think in terms of just the race to liquidity and the race to some kind of a position that can survive any kind of a capital collapse? Do you think about it? Do you worry about it? Do you have a specific liquidity date in mind? What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, I would say building on kind of what I was saying before, for me, IPO is the end game. Right. And so I'm not looking for a short-term exit. At you seeing Succession, I want to go out like Logan Roy. I want to be on the plane, have a heart attack and go out. That's kind of my end game. I told you. But hopefully with better family all around. But that being said, for me, I've never been a short-term type of person. I've always I looked at things for a long term. I think it's great that you took advantage of that opportunity and that you were able to to time it. But I take as much fulfillment in the journey as I do for making money for my investors, which you're part of as well. But this is really what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so this is why for me it's less about a technological trend and more about solving that pain point, because I firmly believe that pain point is one that is going to continue to exist because like every year there's going to be more debt originated. Every year there's going to be more families like us struggling to understand that debt and like to pay off that debt. And so for us, this is something that like in theory can like last for generations and generations. And so I'm in no rush to exit. Seriously.
So I'll talk about this a little bit less from the exit perspective and more from the opportunity perspective, where there's a clear time limit. We don't know what it is, but there's a clear amount of time where right now AI is the most important thing in the world for a large number of people. And 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, that will change. And so I think for startups, especially more at Ned and I stage, it's a critical window to get distribution and get traction before that market turns. Now, if you get there, you'll have opportunities if and when, that next AI winter does.
I'd love to ask a quick question to all three of you, just given where we are, what we're talking about, and actually Dave as well. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think the pace at which, especially around code generation, companies will be sort of re-platforming themselves as they, get rid of legacy code debt is going to be happening faster and faster and faster. And I think there's also a lot of legacy SaaS companies that'll be replaced by startups that can generate their entire software stack very quickly. One thing that I sort of think about as this technology accelerates is like, what's the kind of next existential risk to startups that start to get traction? I mean, I can see a world in which instead of a company going after one market, one entrepreneur builds a platform that creates swarms of companies to go after a market, like 50 companies going after the market at the same time with a slightly different color scheme, a slightly different value proposition, a slightly different go-to-market, a slightly different business model, a slightly different distribution, and then the winner ends up capturing the whole market, or 3 winners end up capturing the whole market. So for any of you, like what concerns do you have about the next generation of entrepreneurs, people that are going to be trying to eat your lunch?
Yeah, I can start here. So I think it's a very valid point, by the way. That's absolutely something that we're going to have to deal with. I think, for us, we're very verticalized. And so I think our advantage is going to be customer trust, right? We work in a very high stakes industry. And even if, one entrepreneur can create 50 companies, each of these buyers is going to want to have a personal relationship with the entrepreneur for each of those 50 companies. And so for us, it's building up that trust of, being the AI vendor of choice for, the specific customer. So Ned is showing me that.
Yeah, no, well, I kind of wanted to go on the long-term planning stuff at a moment, and I can think it's kind of all comes together. Look, like you, from his previous question and what you just asked, we were the first movers in this space, and we are the best movers in this space. The reality is as I was saying before, the technology to build this stuff didn't really exist for long before we started our company. And people who are building a space currently are really only attacking the singular vertical space of consumer behavior. And that is where we'll win, is because we're so horizontal. We build generalized models for human behavior, which means when we go after financial services, we're not using a different model than when we go after defense. It's different security pressures with the security measures with the exact same model, which actually is massive for our GTM strategy, as well as kind of what you were talking about and what you were talking about for long-term planning. It allows us to scale a lot faster, and so far we've dominated a majority of the market that way. I was thinking, like, even talking about long-term planning, where we chose location-wise, we used to be based in SF, and now we're based in New York. I think one of the major differences between those two is because, like you're saying, I'm not looking for some sort of short-term exit. I'm looking to build an enterprise here, and I think, for lack of a better term, the BS meter in New York is extremely more sensitive than it is in San Francisco. You regularly take a company public without revenue in the Bay Area nowadays, and that's not something that we're interested in building.
I think honestly, I think that's just the game we're playing. Like, we are in startups, right? So, yeah, absolutely. Everyone in here is gonna have to be a good salesman. Yeah, if you look at Steve Jobs, the master greatest salesman. Oh yeah, that's right. And so I think that's like a core skill that's required. But you look at these things, and like OpenAI went from 0 to 100 billion in less than 3 years, right? And so these are things that are really happening in Silicon Valley. And so despite what everyone says, I know Silicon Valley gets a lot of bad press, but there's a clear distinction between San Francisco and Silicon Valley proper. Yes, we've always thought of San Francisco as the visitors. Those are bandwagon entrepreneurs, whereas Silicon Valley proper, where you're in the boring like Palo Alto, Stanford, and you're cranking or ironing the hero to work. So I think I would say, like, I'm not too worried about that. Going back to Frazier's question, my point of view is, look, I tell this to my team all the time. Time is by far the biggest enemy of every startup. Like, we're in a race against ourselves, right? And if you're solving a true problem, something that, like, is really, really hard, and you're doing so in a differentiated manner, you don't really have to worry about as a central threat outside of yourself and maybe some regulatory risk that might exist out there, right? And so I think, like, the way that we think about it is, like, are we continuing to move fast regardless of the climate? Are we continuing to, like, have that sense of urgency regardless of how well we're doing, and we're just going to continue to gallop at our own pace and, like, focus on the main problem that we're trying to solve.
I want to pick up on that and ask you about your opinion of Elon Musk. You've got, for the first time in world history, an entrepreneur able to concurrently manage 6 world-changing companies. And I think at least one factor in that is social media. And, entrepreneurs, when I had 23 companies that I was founding over the years, CEOs were very much out of the limelight. And now they're just all over social media. And I think the ability to attract great talent is so much higher now if you have a personality online and followers, and you're out there, and you guys are obviously not afraid to take a microphone. But so that's one factor in what Elon's able to do. Any other thoughts on why the world is so different now than just maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I can take a stab at this, and I'll try not to cancel myself to the extent possible. I do think there's a timing component there that people don't necessarily realize. I think Elon is someone that, like, very much focuses on the task at hand, and he's going to try to basically get the job done by any means necessary. He's also someone that's very adept to the trends, and he understands the trends, and he knows how to take advantage of those. He did so with Tesla. He's doing so with X. And I think, like, that there's something to be said about just the intellectual horsepower of being able to also successfully manage multiple companies. The other thing that he does well, and, like, I've known a lot of people that work for a lot of his companies as well, but, like, he hires very good people around him. He's hard to work with and for, but he knows, like, how to identify talent and how to surround himself with, like, the right type of leaders to actually, like, take these dreams to fruition, but that also have the stamina to kind of, like, go through that birthing process, which is, giving birth to a company, which that's not what you did when you're building these models at Vestigo. Just to be clear.
Samir, you have any thoughts on what? Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll try to keep it concise. I think the single biggest change over the last 10 years is that technical differentiation has been a lot harder to come by, because you have the rise of open source, you have the rise of global workforce, access to information is much easier. 20 years ago, you could build something fairly simple. It'd be 4 years before your competitor figured out how to do the same thing. That doesn't exist anymore. So in a world, you're building a tech company and technical differentiation is much harder to come by. How do you differentiate as a business? There's 2 things, right? One is hiring good talent. 2 is distribution. Elon has done a great job of building a platform that allows him to capitalize on both and actually create this flywheel where hiring great talent is driving better distribution for him. The better distribution helps him get better talent. Like, he's got businesses in 6 different industries. He can get into any room that he wants. And obviously that's Elon Musk. I think there's something to be said about, our generation of entrepreneurs effectively trying to do the same thing.
So good, you bet your whole life in front of EG. Elon an inspiration to you, or do you have any concerns about Elon? Or, like, if you had the perfect life journey, just in broad strokes for yourself, and you think 10, 20, 30 years in the future, like, are you going to have millions and millions of followers? Like, are you going to be, what's it going to look like in your perfect world?
I wouldn't say fame is ever something that I would chase or be particularly, like, fascinated by. I think the opposite would probably be the goal. Okay, I'll give you, like, an example. We do a lot of political work, right? That's a section of our business where we'll replace polling with synthetic agents, no serve people, and it's more accurate, etc. There are campaigns that operate almost purely based off our data, and none of them will ever be able to publicly announce they use our software, because no one's constituency wants to hear, oh, how do you know what I care about? I asked a bunch of robots. Like, it's just the reality of the tech that we build that it's genuinely scary, simulating human behavior, especially when you talk about a lot of larger applications on a geopolitical scale. I once had a reporter, editor-in-chief at a large paper, tell me in our first meeting at the end that Cameron's my co-founder. He goes, she says, there's a movie about you and Cameron, and both of you get shot in the end, and everyone claps. I said, okay, well, that's a great way to end the meeting. But the reality is it's like there are a lot of things attached to the work that we do that we have to be very careful about. We spend a lot of time talking about how we implement safe AI, et cetera. And I don't think ever being massively in the public eye will be a benefit to us.
So, but let me get down and dirty then. So you don't want to be famous like a movie star, walk into a restaurant and can't eat. On the other hand, suppose you're trying to recruit a really, really difficult recruit, somebody you desperately want, so like a young Andre Carpathy. And what's your optimal footprint and number of followers to achieve that goal without tripping over the first wire?
I'd say it's less an optimal number of followers and more an optimized H-index. I think being known in academic circles is something that we strive to have at Aaru. Our research team is really great. We've just hired some tenured professors, which we're super excited about, and we still let them publish, right? Like when we're effectively like a private research lab in some ways, and we still let them publish, which helps us get well known in the academic circles and bring on the right people. I don't ever think our best recruits will be coming from X, to be candid, but we'll see.
Okay. All right. Well, we have 1 minute, and this is always a great opportunity in this context here in Davos. If you want to recruit that person that you're really desperate for, the video from here is usually very, very valuable as a tool in that. So you have about 30 seconds to say, our company, our culture, our mission, you really want to be here.
Yeah, sure. We at Aaru are in New York 6 days a week, full-time, in person. A lot of people come in on Sundays. Palmer Luckey has that whole thing where he says, how do you recruit from OpenAI or FANG companies? He just tells them that anything else they could be doing is useless. I don't think he has the right to say that because all he does is build missiles. I think we do have the right to say that because we predict the future. We're a ragtag group of cowboys, effectively. Majority of us are pretty young, and we work on some pretty crazy stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
And just being Marsh. I mean, I'll keep mine short. Like, if you know, you know. And usually they know, and they apply. So.
It's just tough to follow that one. Yeah, so look, I think Farsight AI, we're approaching a really interesting inflection point, have a lot of great traction, selling into the enterprise. And I think, the next year or two is going to be a really exciting time for the business. So right now, we're seeing the early signs of product market fit and paying customers and all of that's great. And I think 2 years from now, it'll be too late. We'll have already sort of taken this massive market. We're engineering is all core MIT graduates, have equally high bar for sales, operations, everything else that we're hiring for. So it is a very competitive market, financial services AI, but if you look at us and you look at all the other AI startups and you're evaluating on team, I think we're the one that, you'd want to be a part of.
And so, Frazer, if somebody needs money, why would they take money from your Frazer and spell? That's a good question. No, I mean, I would say I think the strength of our portfolio speaks for the quality of our decision making and the quality of the relationships that we build with entrepreneurs. I think our value prop is pretty straightforward and twofold. One is there's not a single person in financial services we can't get to with a phone call. And the other is that we're about 2 blocks from MIT's campus and 10 blocks from Harvard's campus. So the extent to which hiring talented people that know how to build AI systems is interesting to you as an entrepreneur, you should probably think about partnering with us.